Hello individuals, I have been requested for an extended period of time, to put it mildly, to create a review on how I write letters in general, how they are structured, how to make it in a way that you can do it on your own. This video will be about how to start from scratch with simple elements, sticks so to speak, to reach some font composition, let's say the simplest one, and what you can do with it afterwards. Let's go! Let's start with what? Most people notice that letters of a certain font look similar to each other, which is a common observation. That is, for example, the letter A is similar to the letter B, and as a result you achieve a cohesive and harmonious font composition. But what is responsible for the fact that all the letters look alike? And these are the elements of this letter, the vertical and horizontal lines. They have other terms, more professional ones, but for understanding I will speak simpler. So these vertical and horizontal elements in each font have their own features, their own inclinations, their own directions, bends, and so on. Even the distance between these elements often plays a very important role. For example, in the Roman font, there is a very large amount of air inside the letter, and thus the font is written quite easily. It allows to cover large spaces, making the composition look more airy. For example, if we take Gothic, in which the distance within the letter from one vertical line to the second vertical line is nearly identical. In short, this distance between letters is approximately the same as the width of the line. That is, they are almost one-to-one. And there are many such features in different fonts. For example, Arabic script differs in that it has a very ornate form of writing, like handwriting. This feature of font writing also determines the tool with which all this is done. There are actually many such moments that distinguish each font. It would make sense to say this only so that you understand how it happens at all. I just want to tell you how the font is built. To commence the process of developing it, we need to work out these vertical and horizontal elements. Regarding the tools, just to give it a try, just this regular marker with a flat tip will be enough. There are quite a few options. Just because this narrow part is quite fat, even relative to this calligraphic pen. Calligraphic pen lines are more elegant, but it costs money. Not everyone has the opportunity, but I personally started with this marker usually. About the gluographic pen, title, Pilot Pro L Pen, sold in numerous stores. I won't even mention where, what and how to buy, just enter it in the search if you want. As I said, we have horizontal and vertical lines. So actually we have the way the letters are written. Let's assume 1, 2, 3. There are sticks, there are sticks. We can write them like this in various ways. We can tilt the pen 90 or 0 degrees, as many people like to say, simply draw a line like that. Gothic, for example, is written at an angle of approximately 30-45 degrees, that is, the lines are brought like this. In Gothic, they have a strong preference for utilizing various types of notches at the ends of these lines. Let's conduct it separately for comparison. They particularly enjoy utilizing different extensions, such as notches, thereby enhancing the sharpness of your letter. Many individuals still use additional notches like those in the middle of letters, thereby making your letter more spiky, much more interesting, but I do not like all of these. Additional diverse insignia, patterns, and so on and so forth. I have a passion for working with forms, that is to say, you have the ability to achieve, if we simply even create straight lines, merely by rotating the same pen, you have the capability to extend the line in any way that you desire. As a result, even a slight bend fails to meet the desired outcome. On each occasion, this vertical element will vary. Let's include another one solely for testing purposes. By the way, many people also enjoy making these things with various decorative elements. For example, they might add a tail to create a more unique design. Afterwards, they can transition into a horizontal element to further enhance the overall aesthetic. This is what the letter K looks like. I strive to work specifically with simple spellings, that is, I avoid adding a whole bunch of such details. Just there are guys who, for example, will try to write letters like this, then add some notch in the middle of the letter, then like this, and somehow lead like this. They introduce variations in the appearance of the letters, deviating from the conventional form. Then she proceeds in that manner with them. Any other freaking notches are present here. Then some additional stuff takes place. There's still all kinds of junk here. Let's splash here like this, let's hit it, and nothing is understood. I do not like this type of shit at all. It appears cool and dynamic, but in reality, it is nothing. No longer carries any meaning. And I like to combine in the middle so that both aesthetically and in terms of meaning, some proportions are more or less observed in some way. Moreover, I wrote it as simply as possible. Yes, by the way, many guys are asking about these splashes. Just take it head on and hit it on the hand. In this location, drops simply manifest. Personally, I have a preference for employing specific spellings that initiate and terminate in distinct ways. For instance, if we initiate with a certain type of indentation, in such a way that it concludes without any restraint. By the way, here's how this element is made. First, you simply place the pen as you normally would, and then you gradually begin to lift it. That is, by rotating it at a slight angle. That is, the more smoothly you perform it, the smoother this transition will proceed for you directly. And at the end, let's put a mark. I'm telling you guys, I'm showing you as an example now. If you really take it the way I do it in life, I love to do dynamics at all. That is, if we possess it in this manner, some specific element, we have the ability to transform it to be like this. And I have a preference for repeating such elements among themselves. For instance, if we take the letter T, that is, once again, numerous individuals inquired in handwritten form about how to write it down. That is, you initially make a horizontal incision, followed by a vertical one. You have the ability to simply practice such things among yourselves. You can read, for example, sometimes I finish the letters a little differently than usual. This element is located at the bottom, but it can also be positioned at the top. To create an interesting line, you start from the corner and gradually lower the pen. This is achieved by tilting the pen itself. Once you have drawn the line, you can then straighten your hand. However, this method can be a little inconvenient due to the positioning of the element. That's why it's important to be mindful of the pen's tilt and hand position when using this technique. Without practice, however, the end result enables you to do very cool and amazing things. For example, you can simply write a perfect circle by hand, showcasing your skills and creativity. By the way, if you want to practice this thing, you can try to really jerk off in a circle. I'll be honest, guys, I still can't do a full circle on the first try, but I can at least do something similar. By the way, just in case, I'll say right away for those people who mess up circles just like me, look. For example, in those places where the fracture of your circle is particularly visible, you can put a notch or some decorative line there. Due to the fact that there is a small piece in a large space, it will attract attention, thus distinguishing itself from this uneven border, which is why it stands out. You will have a smoother visual circle. If, for example, this side still bothers you, you can move the next letter right up close and close it with this element, thus ensuring a more seamless and aesthetically pleasing design overall. By the way, border will vanish. Let's break it down vertically. In fact, there are numerous combinations, guys. Even elementary. By changing these endings, changing the turn of the line and the bend each time, you will achieve different results. Even if we assume that we split this element into more separate lines, we would make it in the following manner, taking into account the need for clarity and readability. This is already a different element. We use the same techniques. Here the question is only in your imagination. Let's move on to the vertical elements. We will take them right here. Just not so many of them, and they are generally not much different from these ones in most cases. I have recently commenced the utilization of dashes as vertical elements in my creative projects. That is, if we draw a line, that is, we divide the notch, immediately from the same notch we start the second line, in order to maintain a seamless connection between the two lines and ensure a continuous flow of the drawing. And just as I mentioned earlier, that is the way we write elements that are positioned horizontally in general, we can also write elements that are positioned vertically here, depending on your imagination. Well, they extended the curfew. I am able to refine and improve certain elements using the tip of this pen in order to make it appear cleaner and more elegant, with a touch of sophistication and a heightened level of neatness. Because calligraphy is still an art, it is quite neat and clean. And, correspondingly, you have the ability to manipulate the bend, the rotation of the brush in diverse ways, offering you a range of options to explore and play with. Vertical and horizontal lines are the basic skeleton of our letter. On this skeleton, these letters, so to speak, are recognized and distinguished from each other. There are numerous features in the font. That is, you can easily add an additional horizontal line in a certain location, add or remove a vertical line in a certain location, and shorten or lengthen it as needed. Consequently, therefore, from a single letter you are able to generate an entire font layout. What are we doing currently and what will we do in the future? Initially, we will create a single letter, and subsequently, we will attempt to create additional letters using it as a reference. Let us consider the standard Gothic letter A, for instance, in order to demonstrate how you can work out your own elements and composition through a step-by-step process. In terms of spelling, they typically follow traditional conventions. The only variation that may exist between them is the actual distance separating the letters from each other. And they truly have a strong inclination to extend these notches in exactly that way. The distance between the lines will undoubtedly be a completely different matter altogether. Let's suppose, just a little bit literally, let's do it like this. Let us also make an effort to connect even basic. I am here to a small extent and not applying pressure. She already looks entirely different, or here is this thicker notch to produce. But we should also consider trying to establish a connection in a more comprehensive manner and explore other options to enhance the overall appearance. I do not like this bullshit, it is too boring, too monotonous. Allow me to demonstrate how you can transform this same letter into something a little more intriguing and captivating. To begin with, I have a preference for making letters dynamic. My aim is to alter the slope of these lines in order to achieve a more visually appealing result. This can be accomplished by making minor adjustments to the angles and curves. Additionally, divide these elements as we originally had them. I will leave it as is for now. I'll explain later why we need to extend this little tail further to enhance the dynamics. We can do the same for the upper little tail, making it slightly different. This will be discussed in more detail later. The purpose of extending these tails is to enhance the dynamics and add in a unique touch to the overall composition. And we initiate the process of working on the next letter. Let's suppose that I have the intention of bending it slightly at this point in order to create a sense of balance and equilibrium in this particular direction that we are focusing on. I do not want to add this underline. I do not like how it looks, not on any of those examples. Let's assume we transform this element to be completely horizontal in its orientation. And accordingly, this element, which is the tail of the letter shu at the bottom, let it be on top now. I prefer it much more in this way. Now, using this letter as a basis, I will explain to you how to create other letters in the same style, ensuring they have a cohesive visual appearance as if they were part of a single font. Let's not waste time writing the entire alphabet right now. I will demonstrate an example using a short word like tattoo with 4 letters, showing how we can do it stylistically in the same manner. Firstly, we will take the initial letter of ours is T, and we promptly refer to the letter A that we created in the end. The top element was completely horizontal, passed at a 45-degree angle. We'll do it here the same way. Look, I'm telling you just in case, that is, if this element is of standard width. If we take the letter T, in this case, as I write it, it already consists of 3 sticks. Accordingly, it is 1.5 times wider than the letter A. Accordingly, we can visually make the top line approximately 1.5 times wider as well. At first, you can do it this way, then you will just get used to visually making the width. We will make the same tail as we had there. We will take the same tilt of the letter. We start notches as well. Furthermore, attempt to approximately preserve the length of the elements, as otherwise it will be exceedingly challenging to align them in height at a later stage. Let's enlarge it right at this spot. Additionally, here is another one that is identical to it in every way. Look, do you see that this element is very similar to this one? This line is very similar to this one. This is similar to this one. That is, visually the elements are stretched in the same way here, here, and here, and the horizontal line is also maintained. So, in fact, in order to make the letters look as similar as possible, you just need to understand the patterns of the letter you liked and try to apply them to others. Let's attempt another letter, e.g. So we already had the letter T there will be more. That is tattoo. Let's suppose we make the letter U. Just she has an upward extension and a small tail. Let us commence with the identical slope, merely slightly higher in elevation, to initiate our task. In this way, we will be able to draw a little more attention to it. Once again, we make a turn as we continue on our journey, just like on this letter. Then we proceed to create this element, make a notch, and once again draw a line just like we had it there. After that, we take approximately the same elements and continue with the process. It is important to ensure that the elements are consistent throughout. This will help us achieve the desired outcome and maintain the integrity of the design. That is, you see, even here they visually overlap. So, how do we currently make it all come to an end? Actually, the letter U has multiple endings. We can underline a line, thereby writing a letter horizontally, and underline the element itself. But I would like to add it here a little later, specifically in order to extend it a little more. As an illustration, I appreciate it when there are specific dense portions of letters, and then they make a transition to slightly more airy ones. Once we have gained mastery over the regularities of font formation and the peculiarities of our established letter designs, we can begin the process of composing a font composition, utilizing the knowledge and expertise we have acquired in this regard. And we don't necessarily have to follow all the rules we defined for our letters in the previous times. Anyway, we have a certain direction of writing letters. Generally, all letters are written in lowercase. And decorative elements, which exist in typography, for example, the same serifs at the bottom, are created in order for the letters to be read better. And you have the ability to utilize such techniques from typography or other font sciences, so to speak, in order to enhance your written and notches. They truly work if you utilize them in certain situations, simply to maintain the line. And if you distinguish the amount of air between intraletter and interletter, it will be considered much better. Probably I'm talking about some complicated things now, but I'll show them now too. Guys, I will tell you immediately, do not be afraid that your letters will be written in a different manner each time. This is absolutely normal. You will never repeat your own written letter ever again. Look, I bring it here, but I don't bring the tail to the end, both this one and this one. I'll explain why. The thing is that initially when I work, it's much easier for me to first make the entire skeleton of letters and then immediately start finishing the tails so they don't interfere with each other and don't intersect. In summary, we were able to fit and organize a portion of the letter. Subsequently, we can now complete a few docking elements. I have a preference for connecting letters with tails, as it lends a sense of visual intrigue to the text, making it appear more captivating and engaging to the reader's eye. Now the letter T commences from this point in the identical manner. And at the same level, similar to all of these swirling lines, we also carry out this particular task. Once again, I won't cut off the tail completely, because it may come in handy for us a little later in terms of composition. Furthermore, such a situation arises, i.e., we need to move the letter here, U, and here we also need to move the letter A, so it makes sense to bring this little tail here a bit further, because this tail is already almost at the end of the ball composition, i.e., for balanced sides. In addition, these tails should also interconnect with each other, ensuring a seamless connection between them. So we will move them a bit, but not excessively, in order to avoid any interference with other elements in the vicinity. So it transpires that there is an excessive amount of air in this location at present. To be honest, I still have a strong desire to add a vertical element in this particular area, just to make it less chaotic and create a more balanced and visually appealing composition. You can further complicate the composition, for example, by adding some splashes of additional lines between them. For instance, I frequently get tattoos because there are highly significant small details present. I incorporate some light bridges, thereby making the composition appear slightly more intriguing. However, visually it greatly complicates, and I would even say, in certain cases, it clutters. Too much contrast between thick and thin lines of sheriffs. This is the appearance of the word. Even if you expose your tail a bit more, it's fine. The key is that your composition looks harmonious together. As a result, we have a specific font composition simply written in a line, but it doesn't need to be written like that. Many of you have seen compositions written in a circle. The principle of writing is the same, and there can be many variations of writing and forms. I'm a little tired of writing along some clearly calibrated line. I attempt to experiment with amorphous directions. Now I am placing the canvas on the left, so that you roughly get what I'm talking about. You can do the same thing, and there are many application areas, e.g., tattoos, where I apply them, clothes, logos, wall paintings, canvases, painting cars, which we also did, accessories, keychains. Yes, there are many uses. I even forget how much I've tried in most instances. And this is merely one style. In every font, there are distinct characters that you can interpret as your own letters, and as a result, create whatever you desire. Best of luck to all of you.